So imagine this. Got a new campaign coming up, you want to roll up a new D&D character. You think, oh, you know who I want to be? The Hulk. I mean, that's easy, right? Like, we don't have to homebrew that, just be a barbarian. You're big, you're strong, nearly invincible. And sure, you might have to like take a feat for maybe like unarmed fighting, or like Tavern Brawler actually might be good for all the like random objects he throws. But yeah, pretty easy. So why am I talking about this on a homebrew show? Well, I think there's a major problem in making the Hulk a barbarian, and that's the Bruce Banner of it all. You know, a barbarian outside of rage is still big and strong and tough. The transition from normal to raging it's often not a big deal. It's not super dramatic. You just get some resistances and usually some other fun bonuses. No, if you want to be the Hulk, you want to go from like a little weakling to a big monster. That isn't what Barbarian does. So yeah, maybe this is something worth homebrewing. Let's see what we can do. Today I'm going to talk through my thought process on making a homebrew subclass that lets you be the Hulk and Bruce Banner. Even though secretly in my heart, I am making Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from LXG, but I can't put that in the thumbnail because nobody wants that. Anyway, welcome back to Untested Arcana, the show where I take popular media and turn it into tabletop RPG content. And as the name suggests, it's all untested. I wrote most of this in the days before I recorded this. Certainly haven't playtested it, probably never will. But all we're trying to do here is talk about the decisions that lead to that first draft, the thing you bring to the table or bring to your DM to ask, hey, can I try this out? And if it's no good, well, then you change it. That's what homebrew is about. So let's start by setting up our goals. What do we want the Hulk to do? Well, we know the big thing is we want him to be wimpy, 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 and then hefty, hefty, hefty. So really we have two sets of goals. What do we want the Hulk to be, and what do we want Bruce Banner to be? The Hulk should be big, strong, tough, but also not particularly good at anything else. We want him to hit hard with his fists. We want him to use improvised weaponry, maybe make huge leaps or throw debris at people. And importantly, when he's done, he turns back into a little man. To Bruce Banner, the little man. We want him to be super smart. You know, Bruce Banner is a super scientist in Marvel, but I've always felt like all their super scientists are kind of hard to pin down. They can sort of all do everything. So I'm just going to say in general, he can do lots of interesting technological things. And then, of course, his big power is that he can turn into an enormous green rage monster. And so you can see those two at the bottom, they join up with each other. So let's talk about what class works for this. Now, obviously, we've already ruled out Barbarian. We talked about that. But I'm also going to take out all of the other big martial classes. I think when you're the little guy, you shouldn't have things like multi-attack or weapon proficiencies. As is a recurring theme, I'm taking out Rogue because I don't think I need to explain that, right? And we're left now with a bunch of casters. And I'm just going to say right off the bat, I want to do intelligence. You know, obviously, if you want to make a transformative subclass, you could make any of these. But I want intelligence. I want this to be something that you've done to yourself through science or magical science. And that brings us down to 2. And I think the choice is kind of obvious here. I think it should be Artificer. I think Wizard is interesting. Small hit die, very magical. Turning into a big brute would be a real dramatic change. But I kind of feel like it's unfair. You know, 9th level spells, but also the ability to turn into a huge monster, which, by the way, all wizards can do through several spells. No, I think Artificer is the answer. So what does an Artificer subclass look like? Well, unluckily for us, I think Artificer has the fewest subclasses of any class. Makes sense. It's the only official class that isn't in the player's handbook. But luckily for us, they follow some really distinct patterns that we can use to design ours. So I'm just going to throw up a little table here, and you can see that they all get spells at level 3. They all get an extra tool proficiency, and one gets some weapons. And then they get some sort of core feature at 3. So that is the elixirs for alchemists, the armor for armorers, the artillery for artillerists, and the robot friend for battlesmith. I don't really understand that one. At 5, half of them get extra attack, and the other half get increased attack, or at least things that help them attack. At 9, they pretty much all improve their core feature. And at 15, they pretty much all improve their core feature with, some exceptions. Pretty simple. So I thought about this subclass for a little while, this week. Like I've said before, I don't want to make something that could only ever be the Hulk. I do want to make something that could be Jekyll and Hyde, that could potentially be Lizard from Spider-Man, that could be any character that has a monstrous transformation, perhaps one that they don't feel they have sufficient control over. And I think the one thing that ties all of these characters together is that they've experimented on themselves in unethical and unpredictable ways. And so I thought leaning more into like the biological angle would work well and make this more broadly applicable for lots of different characters. And so I am calling this subclass the Metamorph. While many artificers focus their talents on building and enhancing objects, some turn that attention inward, choosing instead to magically alter their own bodies. These arcane surgeons, known as metamorphs, specialize in combining magic and medicine to enhance the power of themselves and their allies. But be warned, tinkering with biology can have monstrous side effects. So yeah, little flavor text, maybe leans a little in the doctor direction, which maybe Bruce Banner isn't. I think he's technically a particle physicist. But again, that's just the flavor that I wrote for this. Obviously, if you choose to play this, flavor it however you want. So we now have to tackle the first three features: spells, a proficiency, and the core feature. Here's the spell list that I put together for the Metamorph. You can see it focuses mostly on sort of altering the humanoid form, either healing it, hurting it, or just changing it. I think the thing I was most interested in here was the 5th level spell, Reincarnate. I kind of like the idea that someone who specializes in reshaping bodies can just make you a new one, but that it'll just end up with whatever it is. And Reincarnate's a cool spell. It's a druid exclusive. I feel like I never hear it talked about. The other thing you'll notice, and this will come up later, is that these three spells, Alter Self, Haste, and Polymorph, are all transmutation spells that require concentration. This is going to be important later. For the proficiency, every other artificer gets a new tool, but there isn't technically a tool for medicine. There's a healer's kit, but it's not a tool proficiency. So instead, I've called this feature Unnatural Knowledge, and I've given them proficiency and expertise in Arcana and Medicine. I think that because Arcana is fairly toothless in-game, it's not super powerful to have expertise, and Medicine is strong in one particular way, stabilizing people on the battlefield. But, if you're a magical doctor who could do magical stuff to people, it kind of makes sense that you should always pass a stabilization check. So I didn't feel so bad giving you expertise in that either. And now we come to the big one, turning into the Hulk. I'm going to be honest up front, this got away from me. What I was trying to make was essentially a wild shaping feature for Artificer with a persistent stat block. So not like Wild Shape where you had to choose from a bunch of stat blocks, but I would make one that would scale with you as you leveled up. This proved to be pretty difficult for a lot of different reasons that I'm going to try to get into, but I don't want this video to be too long. But I'm going to start just by reading it, and we'll deal with the difficulties as we encounter them. Metamorphic Brute. At 3rd level, when you take this specialty, you discover a monstrous new form. As a bonus action, you can assume the form of a metamorphic brute for 1 minute. Your statistics are replaced by the form statistics, which you can find in the metamorphic brute stat block. You determine the form's appearance. Your choice has no effect on its game statistics. When you transform, you assume the form's hit points. When you revert to your normal form, you return to the number of hit points you had before you transformed. However, if you revert as a result of dropping to 0 hit points, any excess damage carries over to your normal form, and you immediately fall unconscious. You retain the benefit of any features from your class or race that the brute form would be physically capable of using, including special senses or damage resistances. While in this form, you cannot cast or concentrate on spells. You also temporarily lose attunement to any magic items, which you regain when you return to your original form. You choose whether your equipment falls to the ground in your space or is worn by your new form. Worn equipment functions as normal, but the DM decides whether it is practical for the new form to wear a piece of equipment. Your equipment doesn't change size or shape to match the new form, and any equipment the brute form can't wear must fall to the ground. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. There's a lot there. I would say about 80 to 90% of it is just straight up copy-pasted from Wild Shape. There's a couple small things that are unique. The important one for me was that you retain any special senses or resistances. I think if you're a fire genasi who transforms into a brute, that brute should resist fire damage. It'd be weird for you to lose that. In the same way, if you have dark vision, your brute form should also have dark vision. I also made you very unmagical. No casting, no concentrating, and importantly for Artificer, no magic items. I think this, to me, would make this really interesting Artificer subclass because, weirdly, I've always had a problem with the Artificer class because thematically you want to be the guy who kits out your party, but the fact that you have so many attunement slots and that it's so much of your budget, you end up using all the magic items you make. So it's weirdly a very selfish class. This kind of encourages you to give out all your magic items because what good are they to you anyway? So yeah, the stat block, this is where it gets tricky, and this is tricky for a number of reasons. One is that D&D Beyond is not good at transformations. It doesn't have a particularly robust system for altering your stats, for changing how you play. Anyone who's played a druid knows this. You got to pull up the monsters and that little side thing. Sometimes they don't roll correctly. It's just awkward. And it's awkward when your DM calls for you to do something that isn't explicitly a button on the thing. You can't make an athletics roll as your wild shape sometimes. You don't have the button for it. Which I realize is a silly thing to complain about because that isn't a problem in real life. In real life, when you play, you don't press buttons. You look at a thing, that's a +3, and you roll a d20 and you add 3. So I kind of split the difference here. This stat block is going to require you to do some work yourself. So the important things here: armor class, 12 plus proficiency bonus. Starts kind of medium, ends up okay, 18, whatever. Hit points 10 times your artificer level. This basically keeps you on par with a barbarian. A little less, actually, once you're at 20th level. Speed of 40 feet, because you're large, and that's standard. Your strength, this is the tricky one. Your strength is 13 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. So it scales with your magical ability and your general character growth. But if you're maxing that out as best you can, you are going to end up with a strength of 24, a maxed out barbarian strength. Dex is set at 12. Constitution scales with proficiency bonus up to 20, but no higher, so less than a capped barbarian. And then your soft stats are garbage. 6, 8, 6. Terrible. You will fail all of those saves. You have 2 saving throw proficiencies, strength and constitution. I have not made these clickable. I don't know what their bonuses are going to be because you're going to have to do that math yourself. I've given you the athletic skill. Again, you have to do that math yourself. I've given you barbarian-style damage resistances, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical sources, which tracks. You are resistant to purely physical damage. You have an ability called Metamorphic Intensity. The brute can use a bonus action on its turn to attempt to grapple a target, take the dash action, or attempt to break a grapple or restraint that would normally require an action. This ability to me is just a way to keep you moving, keep you doing stuff. For attacks, I made it so that the attacks use your spellcasting modifiers. I think that is thematically appropriate, that you are as strong as your magic can make you, but also it means I can put a button on the sheet. And that's weirdly kind of important to me, I think, just for accessibility for people who have gotten used to playing online. I mean, I've almost exclusively played online. You have the Brute Smash, which uses your spell attack modifier and deals 2d6 plus intelligence, not the Brute's intelligence, your intelligence, in bludgeoning damage. You also have Hurl Debris, which is a ranged attack with a 30-foot short range, a 60-foot long range. It does 1d12 damage plus your intelligence modifier. It also has a little bit of ruling there that the DM has to declare that the thing you're throwing is suitable for the attack. So I'm going to just briefly talk about how I came to some of these numbers. I wanted to keep you just at or slightly below the level of maybe the barbarian in your party. I don't want you to make that barbarian feel like they are trivialized. The other thing is you can use it a little bit less than a barbarian. Barbarian rages scale similar to proficiency bonus, but actually faster, and also, obviously, their capstone is that they get infinite rages. You won't ever get that. So, we've established the Brute. That is your core feature. You can turn into a monster for a minute. Let's move on to the 5th level, where several Artificer subclasses get extra attack. And I think that would be obvious here, but I don't want you to get extra attack all the time. I just want the Brute to get extra attack. So we have the feature Brute Strength. By 5th level, your unceasing experimentation enhances your brutish form. Your brute form gains the following benefits. You can attack twice instead of once whenever you take the attack action on your turn. You gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls. When you are forced to make a saving throw besides Constitution, you can use your reaction to make a Constitution saving throw in its place. You can use this ability only once each time you transform. So, attack twice instead of once, that's extra attack. That's easy. The +1 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls, that's because of D&D Beyond. I wanted you to be able to just scale your attack rolls with your scaling strength. But because I set it to your spell attack, it's not going to feel strong enough. You're not going to be at +13 when you cap out. You're going to be at +11 like everybody else. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make this work in D&D Beyond. The tools for that kind of thing are really limited and wonky. I was able to get bonus damage, but not bonus to attack roll. So again, if you are watching this and if you try to play this, you will notice that at 5th level, your damage goes up by 1, but your attack roll doesn't on the little button I've given you. You can edit the action yourself, but honestly, if anyone's watching this and they know what I did wrong or how to do this, please tell me, because this would help me in other things that I'm making. The last one is that little reaction thing to make a Constitution save in place of something else. I don't know, I just thought that was a fun idea. Once per transformation, make a save that you're good at instead of a save that you're terrible at. Could be fun. I think it also makes a certain amount of thematic sense. Like, you just ignore the fact that someone is trying to warp your brain by just toughing it out. Like, you are literally toughing it out. And I want to reiterate, first draft. Maybe this doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's too strong. Maybe it's too weak. That's why this is untested. For the 9th level feature, I actually wanted to move away from the Brute. I think the Bruce Banner side of it needs a little attention. And since the Brute is well scaled at this point and is probably doing fine, so I've made Persistent Transmutation. At 9th level, your ability to alter the flesh of other creatures is unparalleled. Whenever you cast a transmutation spell that targets yourself or a friendly creature, the duration is doubled. If the spell requires concentration, you have advantage on checks made to maintain your concentration on it. Simple feature. Basically just get extended spell for transmutation. I gave you Alter Self, and Haste, and Polymorph. Now those are twice as long. Maybe it doesn't matter so much for some of them, but certainly for Polymorph, 2 hours of Polymorph versus 1 hour, that's a big deal. And the advantage on concentration means that there's a good chance you can hold it for the full duration. And then, of course, the capstone. Brawn and Brain. At 15th level, you have achieved a near-perfect fusion of your enormous intellect and your hulking transformation. Your brute form gains the following benefits. Your attacks gain a +2 to attack and damage rolls. You can maintain your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores while in your brute form, as well as any saving throw proficiencies you have for those abilities. You maintain your attunement to magic items and are able to cast spells while in your brute form as long as they do not require concentration. You can stay in this form for 1 hour each time you undergo your transformation. This should be obvious. This is Smart Hulk, Professor Hulk, Joe Fixit, whatever you want to call it. This is the version of the Hulk that can talk and can do science. But it's not perfect. Still can't concentrate on spells. You can't be it forever. Now, an hour, and at this level, your proficiency bonus is what, like 5, 6? So that's 5 or 6 hours a day that you can be the brute while fully spellcasting. But it's not 24 hours a day. And importantly, because you can't concentrate, you can't stack this and Persistent Transmutation. You cannot be the brute for an hour and haste yourself for 2 minutes. I felt like that was maybe over the line. And I still wanted that sense that you are altered, that you are not quite yourself. And so not concentrating, to me, has that flavor. Now, like I said, this was a problem to put in D&D Beyond. I'm going to keep futzing around with this even after I publish this and try to publish new versions with some fixes, just some technical fixes. But obviously, if you're watching this and you like it, check out the link. Go try it on D&D Beyond. Make a character. Play it in a one-shot. Just screw around with it. Let me know how you feel. I'm feeling pretty good about continuing to make these videos. I'm recording this on January 27th, which was a big day for the OGL fight. Things seem okay. And so until they're not, I'm gonna keep on doing this because I'm enjoying making these videos. But until next time, this has been Untested Arcana, and I'll see you later.